Marcus grabbed his phone during the board meeting, pulling up the security app like he'd done 100 times before. 9 nannies had disappointed him, lied to him, stolen from him, treated his sons like paychecks instead of people. When the living room camera loaded and he saw 3 empty wheelchairs lined against the wall, ice flooded his veins. Then the camera angle shifted. His 3 paralyzed sons, Jaden, Braden, and Hayden, stood in the center of the room on trembling legs, taking steps toward the young woman kneeling before them with tears streaming down her face. Marcus's coffee cup hit the conference table. The room went silent. But he couldn't hear anything except his own heartbeat drowning out the world. Before we continue, if you believe that the triplets deserve to be loved and cared for, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. 18 months ago, Marcus Thornton lost everything that mattered. His wife Victoria died in a car accident on a rain-soaked highway. Returning from their anniversary dinner he'd almost canceled for a merger meeting. She'd texted him 20 minutes before impact, "Can't wait to see you. Love you more than yesterday?" He never replied. Just 3 words he'd been too busy to type. 3 hours later, Marcus stood in a hospital corridor being told his wife of 8 years was gone. No warning. No goodbye. Just a sterile waiting room and 3 two-year-old boys who would wake up tomorrow asking for their mother. The doctors delivered the second blow 2 weeks after the funeral. Post-viral neurological damage. All 3 boys. The infection had come fast, fever, lethargy, then the terrible morning when Jaden couldn't stand. By the time Marcus rushed them to Johns Hopkins, Braden and Hayden showed the same symptoms. The specialists ran every test money could buy. Brain scans. Nerve conductivity. Muscle biopsies. The verdict came in charts and clinical language, but the message was clear: progressive muscle weakness causing paralysis. "Mr. Thornton, we need to prepare you. Based on the imaging and response patterns, walking is highly unlikely. Possibly permanent." Marcus heard the words, but they didn't land. Not then. He was still burying Victoria in his mind, still replaying that unanswered text message, still calculating all the moments he'd chosen work over presence. Weeks passed. Then months. The boys didn't improve. They didn't hit milestones. They sat in custom wheelchairs, Jaden in the blue one, Braden in red, Hayden in green, small bodies motionless, eyes that used to light up when Daddy came home now distant and glazed. Marcus flew in specialists from Mayo Clinic, purchased equipment that cost more than most people's annual salaries, hired the finest physical therapists Manhattan had to offer. Nothing changed. The boys didn't walk. They barely responded. And Marcus, alone in his glass penthouse on the 47th floor, started to accept what the doctors said. His sons would never stand. Never run through Central Park. Never chase each other the way he and his brother once did. He buried that hope right next to Victoria. Then came the nannies. 9 of them in 14 months. The first quit after 2 weeks, said watching the boys was too emotionally draining. The second spent more time scrolling Instagram than engaging with his sons. Marcus fired her on the spot. The third seemed perfect, warm, experienced, came with glowing references, until he discovered she'd stolen Victoria's diamond earrings and sold them to a pawn shop for $800. After that, something broke inside him. One nanny stole prescription medication. Another accessed his financial accounts and vanished with $15,000. One sold photos of the boys to a tabloid. Another brought her boyfriend into the penthouse while Marcus was traveling. Each one arrived with a smile and a resume. Each one left with his trust bleeding out behind them. Marcus stopped seeing people. He saw threats. He saw risks. He saw patterns of betrayal waiting to reveal themselves. He installed cameras in every room. Living room, playroom, bedrooms, hallways, kitchen. 16 angles covering every inch of space where his sons existed. He watched the footage at night, sitting in his home office with 3 monitors glowing, rewinding and zooming, searching for the lie, the angle, the moment when the mask would slip. Control became his only protection. Surveillance became his only parenting. So when Maya Bailey walked through his front door on a cold Tuesday morning, 28 years old, dressed professionally but radiating warmth he didn't trust, Marcus didn't see a person. He saw the 10th failure waiting to happen. "No improvising," he told her, not looking up from her file. His voice was flat, mechanical, the same speech he'd given 9 times before. No emotional attachment. No unauthorized treatments or exercises. Follow the medical protocol exactly as outlined. The doctors have made their prognosis clear. I need someone who understands we're managing a condition, not chasing miracles. Maya nodded slowly. "I understand, Mr. Thornton." But she didn't understand. Or maybe she understood too well. Because Maya didn't follow his rules. She sang to those boys when she thought no one was listening. She moved their legs in patterns the therapists never prescribed, rhythmic and dance-like, while telling them stories about brave little warriors. She whispered words of encouragement like she believed they could hear her, like she believed they could become more than their diagnosis. She brought music into that sterile playroom. She brought laughter into the silence. She brought presence into a home that had become a mausoleum. And Marcus watched it all through his cameras. At first, he watched to catch her breaking protocol, to document the inevitable failure. Then he watched because he couldn't look away. Because something was happening in that penthouse. Something small at first, barely noticeable. Jaden smiled during her songs, a real smile, not the vacant expression that had haunted Marcus for months. Braden's fingers twitched when she played music, responding to rhythm the specialist said his damaged nerves couldn't process. Hayden opened his eyes and held them open, tracking Maya's movements across the room, engaged with the world for the first time since the diagnosis. Marcus told himself it meant nothing. He told himself hope was dangerous, the cruelest form of self-deception. He told himself the doctors knew best, that progress was impossible, that accepting reality was the only way to survive. But late at night, alone in his office with the blue glow of monitors lighting his face, Marcus watched a young woman fight for his sons with nothing but patience and belief. And somewhere deep in his chest, in a place he thought had died with Victoria on that rain-soaked highway, something started to crack. He didn't trust it. He couldn't. Because hope, when you've buried it that deep beneath grief and guilt, doesn't feel like relief. It feels like a trap. Day 1, Maya followed protocol perfectly. Marcus watched from his office, 3 monitors glowing, tracking her every movement. She arrived at 7 sharp, reviewed the medical charts, administered medications at precise intervals. She positioned the boys according to the therapist's specifications, maintained clinical distance, spoke in calm, measured tones. Professional. Detached. Exactly what he demanded. Marcus sat back in his chair, suspicious. They always started perfect. Day 2, she brought a small speaker. Marcus's finger hovered over the intercom button the moment he saw her pull it from her bag. Not in the protocol. Unauthorized equipment. He should stop this immediately. His mouth opened to speak. Then Maya pressed play. Soft piano music filled the therapy room, something classical, gentle, the kind of melody that felt like sunlight through windows. Jaden's head turned toward the sound. Marcus leaned closer to the screen, heart hammering. His son, his motionless, unresponsive son, had just made a voluntary movement. The first in weeks. Marcus's fingers stayed frozen above the intercom. He didn't press it. Day 3, Maya was on the floor. She had Braden's small legs in her hands, moving them in rhythmic patterns while singing softly. Not the prescribed physical therapy exercises. Something else. Something fluid and dance-like, left right, as if his son's body remembered music his mind had forgotten. Marcus grabbed his phone. This had gone too far. He pulled up her agency contact, thumb hovering over the call button. Then Braden smiled. Not a reflex. Not a grimace. A real smile, the first since Victoria died, since the diagnosis stole everything from them. His little face lit up like he'd remembered something wonderful. Marcus set the phone down. His hands were shaking. Day 4, Maya told stories. Tales of brave little warriors who climbed impossible mountains, who fell down 7 times and stood up 8. She used different voices for each character, deep and gruff for the mountain troll, high and sweet for the fairy guide. The boys watched her face, transfixed. Hayden's eyes stayed open, tracking her movements across the room, more alert than Marcus had seen him in months. Day 5, she did all 3. Music played while she moved their legs. Stories flowed while she stretched their arms. And between it all, she whispered words Marcus could barely hear through the speakers. You're stronger than anyone knows. I see it. Even if they don't. Marcus watched from his office, jaw clenched so tight his teeth ached. Every instinct screamed to fire her. She was breaking rules, defying protocols, filling his sons with hope that would destroy them when it failed. But he couldn't look away. Couldn't press the button. Couldn't end this. That night, he didn't sleep. Just sat in his office reviewing footage, Maya singing, the boys responding, small movements multiplying into something that looked almost like life. They were more alive than they'd been in a year. She was breaking every rule. And his sons were responding. Marcus didn't know which terrified him more. 2 a.m. Marcus sat in his office, sleep impossible, and pulled up the security feed like he always did when the silence became too loud. The therapy room glowed softly on the monitor. Someone was still there. Marcus leaned forward, squinting at the screen. Maya lay on the floor between the 3 small beds where the boys slept, positioned in the center like a bridge connecting them. She held Jaden's hand in her left, Braden's in her right. Hayden's tiny fingers rested on her shoulder. She was crying. Not sobbing. Just quiet tears slipping down her face while she whispered words Marcus had to turn the volume up to hear. I won't give up on you. I promise. I won't. You're going to do amazing things. All three of you. Marcus checked the timestamp. 11:47 p.m. Her shift had ended at 6. His fingers moved across the keyboard, pulling up previous nights. Monday, there she was, lying between their beds at 11:30. Sunday, midnight. Saturday, 11:15. Thursday, she'd stayed until 12:30. Every single night. Hours past her shift. Unpaid. Off the clock. On screen, Maya hummed a lullaby, something old and gentle. Her hand stroked Jaden's hair, then reached across to smooth Braden's blanket, then touched Hayden's cheek with such tenderness it made Marcus's chest ache. Your mama would be so proud of you, she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. And your daddy, he's just scared. But he loves you. I know he does. Marcus's throat closed. His hands gripped the edge of his desk. When was the last time he'd sat with them like this? Not watched through a camera, but actually been present? When was the last time he'd held their hands while they fell asleep? When was the last time he'd told them he loved them? He couldn't remember. The realization hit him like a physical blow. For 18 months, he'd given them everything money could buy, equipment, specialists, round-the-clock care. Everything except himself. He'd hired people to love his sons because he was too afraid to do it himself. Too afraid that loving them fully meant risking more loss he couldn't survive. Maya finally stood at midnight, exhausted, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. She kissed each boy's forehead, Jaden, Braden, Hayden, then whispered one more time, I'll be back tomorrow. I promise. She left. The room went dark except for the nightlight shaped like a moon. Something cracked in Marcus's chest. Something he thought had died with Victoria on that rain-soaked highway. Marcus sat in the darkness of his office, staring at an empty room on a screen, and felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in 18 months, shame. 6 weeks later, Marcus did something unusual. He attended the boys' neurological checkup himself. Dr. Chen glanced up when he walked into the examination room, surprise flickering across her face. In 18 months, he'd never come to a routine appointment. That's what nannies were for. Mr. Thornton. Good to see you. Marcus nodded, taking a seat in the corner while Maya positioned the boys. Dr. Chen began with Jaden, performing the standard reflex tests she'd done a dozen times before. Patellar response. Achilles reflex. Plantar response. She paused. Her brow furrowed. That's unexpected, she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. She repeated the test. Same result. Quickly, she moved to Braden, then Hayden. With each test, her movements became more deliberate, more focused. She set down her reflex hammer and called into the hallway. Dr. Patel? Could you come in here for a moment? A younger doctor entered. The two physicians huddled over the boys, reviewing charts, conducting tests again, whispering in medical terminology Marcus couldn't fully parse. His hands gripped the armrest of his chair. What is it? His voice came out harder than intended. Dr. Chen turned, her expression carefully neutral but her eyes bright. Mr. Thornton, the boys are showing nerve response improvement. Significant improvement. New neural pathways appear to be forming. Marcus's heart hammered. What does that mean? It means their brains are rewiring around the damaged areas, creating new connections to compensate for what was lost. She paused. This shouldn't be possible at this stage. Not with their initial prognosis. She turned to Maya, who stood quietly beside Hayden's examination table. What have you been doing with them? Maya hesitated, her eyes flicking to Marcus. I've been engaging them. Music, play, movement patterns. It's called neurological play therapy. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. That's controversial. Most doctors dismiss it as pseudoscience. Marcus leaned forward. But your sons have shown more progress in 6 weeks than most patients show in a year. Dr. Chen looked at Maya with something close to respect. Whatever you're doing, it's working. The drive home was silent. Maya sat in the passenger seat, nervous, picking at her fingers. Marcus didn't speak. Didn't know what to say. He dropped her off at her apartment building without a word. That night, Marcus didn't watch security footage. Instead, he researched. Childhood neuroplasticity. Play therapy and neural development. Recovery from paralysis. Medical journals flooded his screen. Case studies from MIT. Research papers from Stanford and Johns Hopkins. Everything Maya had claimed, the brain's ability to rewire itself, the power of engagement and play in neural pathway formation, the importance of early intervention, it was all there. Published. Peer-reviewed. Proven. He'd spent $200,000 on traditional medicine that maintained his son's condition. Expensive equipment. Renowned specialists. Clinical protocols designed to manage, not heal. He was paying Maya $15 an hour to actually save them. Marcus stared at his computer screen until the words blurred together, until 4 a.m. crept past and Manhattan's skyline began to lighten. He'd chosen expensive hopelessness over affordable belief. And the reason was simple: grief made him afraid to try. 3 days later, Marcus couldn't hold it in anymore. He found Maya in the therapy room after the boys had been put down for their nap. She was organizing toys, humming softly. She looked up when he entered, and something in his expression made her go still. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice was tight, controlled. "About your methods?" Maya set down the toy she was holding. "You told me not to give them hope. You said hope was dangerous. So you went behind my back?" "No, Mr. Thornton." Her voice stayed calm, steady. "I gave them something else. I gave them presents. I showed up. Every day. That's all they needed. Someone who showed up." The words hit like a slap. Marcus's voice broke. "You think I haven't shown up? I've given them everything, the best doctors, the best equipment, round-the-clock care. I think you've been watching them through screens because being in the room means feeling everything you've been running from." Silence filled the space between them. "You don't know what it's like to lose." "You're right. I don't." Maya's voice was gentle but firm. "But they do. They lost their mother. And then they lost their father to grief." Marcus turned away, couldn't face her. His hands were shaking. "They don't need a perfect father, Mr. Thornton." Maya's voice softened. "They just need their father." Marcus left without another word. The next day, he sat in the conference room trying to focus on a $500 million acquisition deal. The CEO was talking. Numbers were being discussed. Marcus heard none of it. His phone buzzed. Motion alert. Living room. 2 p.m. Unusual. The boys should be in the therapy room. He pulled up the app under the table. 3 empty wheelchairs lined against the wall. Marcus's breath stopped. His first thought was panic, something's wrong, an emergency. Then the camera angle widened. Jaden stood in the center of the room, wobbly but upright, his small hands clutching Maya's fingers. Braden beside him, legs trembling with effort. Hayden, the smallest, the one doctor said had the worst prognosis, standing completely on his own. Maya knelt 5 feet away, arms spread wide, tears streaming down her face. "Come to me, my brave boys. You can do it. I'm right here." Jaden lifted his foot. "Set it down." 1 step. Braden followed, cautious but determined. 2 steps. Hayden watched his brothers, then launched forward with 3 quick toddler steps before collapsing into Maya's arms. She caught all 3 of them, pulling them against her chest as they giggled, and she sobbed. "I knew it. I always knew. You're the strongest boys in the whole world." Marcus's coffee cup tipped over. Hot liquid spread across the conference table. Executives jumped back. Someone asked him a question. But Marcus was frozen, staring at his phone screen as 18 months of carefully controlled grief exploded in his chest. Tears poured down his face. His whole body shook. His paralyzed sons were walking. And he'd almost missed it. Marcus left the meeting without explanation. Executives called after him. The CEO stood, confused. Marcus didn't hear any of it. He just walked out, took the elevator down 43 floors, and drove home with hands shaking on the steering wheel. He walked through the penthouse door at 3 p.m., he was never home this early. Maya sat on the floor with the boys, reading from a picture book. All 3 were nestled around her, listening. The wheelchairs sat unused against the wall, abandoned like relics from another life. She looked up, startled to see him. Neither spoke. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Then Marcus crossed the room and knelt beside them. His hands trembled as he reached out, touching Jaden's face first, then Braden's, then Hayden's. Really touching them, not through a screen, not from a distance. The boys stared up at him. This man who watched from doorways but never entered. Who provided everything except himself. "I'm sorry," Marcus whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here. I was so afraid of losing you like I lost your mother that I—" He couldn't finish. Tears choked the words off. Maya quietly stood to give them privacy. Marcus caught her hand. "Stay. Please." He looked up at her, his face wet. "You're the reason they're still fighting. The reason they're walking. The reason they're alive in ways I stopped letting myself be." Maya nodded, tears in her own eyes. She sat back down. Marcus gathered all 3 boys into his arms for the first time in months, really held them, felt their weight, breathed in their scent. They were warm and solid and real. Jaden reached up, touching his father's face with curious fingers, as if meeting him for the first time. "Daddy home?" Braden asked, the question carrying more weight than a 2-year-old could possibly understand. Yes, Marcus answered, something fundamental shifting in his chest. Daddy's home. Later, after the boys had been put down for their nap, Marcus found Maya in the kitchen. They stood in awkward silence until he finally spoke. I spent 18 months watching them through screens because I thought keeping distance would hurt less. He met her eyes. I was wrong. Maya's voice was gentle. They didn't need a perfect father, Mr. Thornton. They needed their father. The one willing to show up, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Marcus walked to his office. He opened the security app on his computer. One by one, he shut down the cameras in the boys' rooms. Not all the monitors, he wasn't foolish. But those ones. The ones pointed at where his son slept, played, lived. Some things aren't meant to be observed from a distance, he whispered to the empty room. He returned to find the boys awake, playing on the floor with Maya. Marcus didn't watch from the doorway this time. He walked in, sat down, let Hayden climb into his lap. Maya watched from her spot nearby, smiling. The wheelchairs sat in the corner, already gathering dust. Marcus didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Setbacks, probably. Challenges. More therapy, more work, more mountains to climb. But for the first time since Victoria died, he wasn't watching life through a lens. He was living it. And that, he finally understood, was where miracles happened. Thank you for watching till the end. Click subscribe and let me know the lessons you learned in the comment below, and turn on the notification bell because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it.